The upscale restaurant buzzed with golden light and whispered conversations. A waiter nudged his colleague. "That guy's definitely lost. Look at that beat-up suitcase." Daniel Brooks sat down in his wrinkled shirt, placing his worn leather case beside the chair. Across from him, Sophia Reed, billionaire CEO and designer, black diamonds glittering, stared with ice-cold eyes. "You're not who I was supposed to meet," she said flatly. Daniel touched the menu, silent for a heartbeat, then looked up. "I'm sitting in for my friend tonight. Do you want to leave?" Her jaw tightened. She should walk away. But something in his calm honesty made her stay frozen in place. Everything was about to change. Daniel Brooks carried the weight of 34 years in his shoulders. 3 of them spent navigating single parenthood after his wife died in a car accident that still visited his dreams. He worked as an aircraft maintenance engineer, steady pay, honest work, but nothing that impressed anyone at cocktail parties. Every night he came home to their small apartment where his 7-year-old daughter Lily waited with homework and stories about her day. And every night he checked the contents of his old suitcase, just a few photos of Sarah and the letter she'd written him before the accident, telling him to find happiness again. Tonight was supposed to be simple. His best friend Tom had begged him for a favor. "I've got this blind date through the app, but my boss just called me to Baltimore. Emergency client meeting. Could you just sit in? Tell her I'm sick, apologize, buy her dinner so she doesn't feel stood up." Daniel had agreed reluctantly, thinking he'd order coffee, make polite conversation, and be home by 8 to help Lily with her math homework. He hadn't expected Meridian, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. He definitely hadn't expected the woman sitting across from him. Sophia Reed moved through the restaurant like she owned it, which Daniel would later learn she actually did, along with a dozen other establishments across the city. Her business empire had made her one of the youngest billionaire CEOs in the country, but tonight she looked more like royalty than a businesswoman. The maitre d' had recognized her immediately, practically bowing as he led her to the table. Other diners turned to stare, phones discreetly capturing photos of the famous CEO. When she saw Daniel, her perfectly composed expression shifted to something colder. "Let me guess," Sophia said, settling into her chair with practiced elegance. "Tom couldn't make it, so he sent, what, his older brother, a cousin?" Daniel met her gaze steadily. "His friend. And yes, he couldn't make it, work emergency. So he thought I was desperate enough to sit through dinner with a complete stranger." Her voice carried the sharp edge of someone accustomed to being disappointed by people's assumptions. The waiter appeared with expensive wine that Daniel couldn't pronounce, much less afford. Sophia waved it away. "Just water for both of us," she said curtly. "This won't take long." Daniel watched her carefully. Behind the designer dress and diamond jewelry, he recognized something familiar, the look of someone who'd been let down one too many times. "I could leave," he offered quietly. "Save us both the awkward conversation. But I promised my friend I'd at least apologize properly and make sure you didn't sit here alone." Something in his tone made her pause. She'd expected him to be intimidated by her wealth, her reputation, her obvious irritation. Instead, he seemed genuinely concerned about her feelings. "What do you do, Daniel?" She caught his name from Tom's original message. "I fix airplanes. Keep them safe so people can get home to their families." The simple honesty of it caught her off guard. In her world, everyone had an angle, a pitch, a reason to impress her. "And you have a family?" she asked, noticing the slight tan line where a wedding ring used to be. "A daughter, Lily. She's 7. His voice softened automatically, the way single parents' voices do when they mention their children. Her mother passed away 3 years ago. Sophia felt something shift in her chest. Not pity, but recognition. Loss had a particular flavor, and she tasted it in his words. For the first time all evening, she really looked at him instead of looking through him. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. "Thank you," Daniel replied simply. The waiter returned, hovering uncertainly. Neither of them had touched their menus. "Are we staying?" Daniel asked. Sophia surprised herself by nodding. "We're staying." The conversation that followed was unlike anything either of them had expected. Daniel ordered simply grilled salmon and vegetables, while Sophia chose something she barely tasted. But food wasn't the point. For the first time in months, she found herself talking to someone who didn't want anything from her. "So why were you on a dating app?" Daniel asked, genuinely curious. "Someone like you, I would have thought you'd meet people through work, social events." Sophia's laugh was bitter. "You mean someone like me should have men lining up to marry my bank account? You're not wrong, but that's exactly the problem." She traced the rim of her water glass with one finger, her diamond bracelet catching the light. "My family has very specific ideas about who I should marry. There's a man, Richard Blackstone, whose family owns half the commercial real estate in the city. Our parents have been planning this match since we were teenagers." Daniel listened without judgment, which made it easier for her to continue. "Richard's not cruel exactly. He's just entitled. He sees me as a merger, not a person. The dating app was my small rebellion, a way to meet someone who didn't already know my net worth before learning my middle name." "And how's that working out?" Daniel asked with a slight smile. "Well, I'm having dinner with a man carrying a suitcase held together with duct tape, discussing my daddy issues. So, better than expected, actually." For the first time all evening, she smiled genuinely, and Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death, interest in another person that went beyond politeness. "What's in the suitcase?" Sophia asked, nodding toward the battered leather case beside his chair. Daniel's expression grew serious. "Photos of my wife, and a letter she wrote me before she died. She made me promise to keep living, not just surviving. Some days I need to remind myself what that means." Sophia studied his face, seeing past the tired eyes and worn clothes to something deeper, a man who'd been tested by loss and chosen to remain gentle instead of bitter. "Do you miss her terribly?" she asked softly. "Every day. But missing her doesn't mean I can't appreciate what's in front of me now." The weight of his words settled between them like a bridge neither had expected to build. "I've never lost someone like that," Sophia admitted. "But I understand feeling empty. My penthouse has 12 rooms and they're all perfectly decorated and completely lifeless. I eat most of my meals standing up at the kitchen counter, reading business reports. That sounds lonely." "It is, but it's also safe. No one can disappoint you if you don't expect anything from them." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "Lily taught me something about that. She says being afraid of getting hurt is like being afraid of getting happy. They come from the same place." Smart kid. Smarter than her father most days. Their conversation was interrupted by the waiter offering dessert menus. But neither wanted the evening to end. They'd stumbled into something rare, genuine connection without pretense or agenda. "Can I ask you something?" Sophia said as they finally prepared to leave. "Why did you really come tonight? You could have just texted an apology." Daniel considered the question carefully. "Because Tom said you seemed excited about meeting someone new, and because I remember what it felt like to be stood up. It's not about the food or the fancy restaurant, it's about feeling like you don't matter enough for someone to show up. And you thought I mattered enough. Everyone matters enough for someone to show up." Sophia felt something crack open inside her chest, a wall she'd built so carefully over years of business meetings and family expectations and relationships that were really just negotiations in disguise. Would you like to have coffee sometime?" she found herself asking. "Somewhere less intimidating than this place?" Daniel smiled. "I know a diner where they serve coffee in actual mugs instead of tiny cups that cost more than my phone bill." "That sounds perfect." They stood to leave and Daniel instinctively helped her with her coat, a gesture so simple and automatic that it took her breath away. When was the last time someone had helped her with her coat without expecting something in return? Outside the restaurant, as they waited for their respective rides, Daniel's 10-year-old Honda and Sophia's sleek town car, she turned to him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Daniel, thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for staying." The next morning, Sophia found herself thinking about airplane mechanics while reviewing quarterly reports. She wondered what it would be like to fix something with your hands instead of breaking things apart in boardroom meetings. On impulse, she drove to the address Daniel had mentioned, Morrison Aviation Services. She told herself she was just curious, but she knew she was lying. She found Daniel in the hangar, elbow deep in an engine compartment, explaining something to a younger technician. He looked completely in his element, confident, competent, focused. That's when a small blur of energy came running across the hangar floor. "Daddy! Daddy! Look what I made in art class!" Lily Brooks was pure sunshine, gap-toothed smile, pigtails slightly askew, clutching a paper airplane decorated with crayon flowers. She skidded to a stop when she saw Sophia, her eyes wide with curiosity rather than shyness. "Hi, are you Daddy's new friend? I'm Lily, and I'm 7 3/4 years old." Sophia knelt down to Lily's eye level, her expensive dress forgotten. "Hi, Lily. I'm Sophia. That's a beautiful airplane. Want to see it fly? Daddy taught me how to make them go really far." For the next 10 minutes, Sophia found herself running around an airplane hangar, chasing paper airplanes and laughing harder than she had in years. Daniel watched from beside the aircraft, his heart doing something complicated and wonderful in his chest. Their quiet courtship might have continued in stolen coffee dates and hangar visits, but Sophia's family had other plans. Richard Blackstone appeared at Morrison Aviation on a Tuesday morning like a storm cloud in an expensive suit. He arrived in a convoy, black SUVs, private security, and the kind of entitled confidence that money could buy but couldn't earn. Daniel was under the hood of a small aircraft when Richard's voice cut through the hangar noise. "So this is where the help hangs out." Daniel straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. He'd been expecting this confrontation since Sophia had mentioned her family's plans for her future. Richard looked exactly like what he was: old money, new arrogance, and the assumption that everything had a price, especially people. "Richard Blackstone," he introduced himself without offering his hand. "I believe you know my fiancée." "I know Sophia," Daniel replied calmly. "I wasn't aware she was engaged." "It's been arranged for years. Our families have substantial business interests together. She's just going through a rebellious phase, slumming with the working class to annoy her father." Daniel felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his voice level. "You might want to ask Sophia what she thinks about that arrangement." Richard laughed, the kind of laugh that had never been challenged, never been told no. "Look, grease monkey, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but Sophia Reed is worth approximately $2.4 billion. Her trust fund alone could buy this entire operation 50 times over. What exactly do you think you can offer her?" Before Daniel could answer, Sophia's voice cut across the hangar like a blade. "He can offer me something you never could, Richard: respect." She strode across the concrete floor in her business suit, but there was nothing cold about her demeanor now. She was furious. "How dare you come to Daniel's workplace and speak to him like that?" Richard smoothed his tie, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. "Sophia, darling, I'm trying to save you from embarrassment. This little adventure has gone on long enough." "Adventure?" Sophia's voice rose dangerously. "Is that what you call it when I try to make my own choices?" "I call it temporary insanity. You're a Reed. Your great-grandfather built this city's financial district. You don't date mechanics." Daniel started to step back, recognizing this as a family argument that didn't involve him, but Sophia caught his arm. "No, stay. I want you to hear this." She turned back to Richard, her CEO mask slipping to reveal something raw and real underneath. "You want to know what Daniel offers me? He shows up. He listens when I talk instead of waiting for his turn to speak. He makes me laugh without trying to impress me. He has a daughter who draws me pictures and includes me in her paper airplane competitions." "Sophia, I'm not finished." The authority in her voice could have stopped traffic. "You know what else he offers me, Richard? Choice. He's never once told me what I should do, what I should want, or who I should be. He likes me for who I am, not what I'm worth." Richard's composure finally cracked. "What you're worth is exactly what makes you valuable. Your money, your connections, your family name, that's what matters in the real world." Daniel had heard enough. "Sir, with all due respect, I think you should leave." "I don't take orders from employees," Richard sneered. You're not in your boardroom now, Daniel replied quietly. This is my workplace, and I'm asking you to go. The tension in the hangar was electric. Richard's security detail shifted nervously, unsure whether this qualified as a threat to their boss. Sophia, Richard said, his voice taking on a different tone, cajoling, manipulative. Think about this rationally. Your father will cut you off completely if you don't honor the engagement. No trust fund, no company position, no family support. Is this really worth throwing away everything you've worked for? For a moment, Sophia wavered. Daniel could see the fear in her eyes, not of poverty, but of complete isolation from the only life she'd ever known. She started, then stopped. Daniel stepped forward, not to pressure her, but to offer support. Sophia, whatever you decide is okay, but don't decide out of fear. Decide out of hope. Hope? Richard scoffed. Hope doesn't pay for penthouse apartments or European vacations or designer clothes. No, Daniel agreed, but it pays for something else. It pays for feeling like you belong somewhere because someone chose you, not because someone bought you. Sophia looked between the two men, one representing everything she'd been raised to want, the other offering something she'd never known she needed. The choice, when it came, surprised everyone in the hangar. Sophia reached into her purse and pulled out an enormous diamond ring, Richard's official engagement ring, which she'd been carrying around but never wearing. She walked over to Richard and placed it gently in his palm. I'm sorry, Richard, but I can't marry you. I won't marry you. Richard stared at the ring like it was a snake. You're making a mistake, Sophia, a very expensive mistake. Maybe, she said, her voice stronger now, but it's my mistake to make. After Richard and his entourage left, the hangar felt strangely quiet. Sophia stood in the middle of the concrete floor, looking smaller without her usual armor of certainty. I might lose everything, she said quietly. Daniel approached carefully. What would you lose that actually matters? She thought about it, really thought about it. Her father's approval, which had always been conditional anyway. Her trust fund, which had been more prison than privilege. Her position in a company that valued her name more than her ideas. Maybe not as much as I thought, she admitted. Lily chose that moment to come running out of the office where she'd been doing homework, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded. Sophia, look, I drew another picture. This one showed 3 stick figures standing in front of a house with a garden. Sophia was clearly identifiable by her long hair and the crown Lily had drawn over her head. That's you, Daddy, and me, Lily announced proudly. We're a family now, right? Sophia knelt down to Lily's level, her eyes filling with tears she didn't try to hide. Would you like that, sweetheart? Yes. Families are supposed to take care of each other. And you need taking care of because you're too skinny and you work too much. Daniel laughed, pulling both his girls into a hug that felt like coming home after a very long journey. For the first time in her adult life, Sophia Reed felt truly wealthy. The consequences came swiftly. By the end of the week, Sophia's father had frozen her trust fund, removed her from the company board, and issued a statement distancing the Reed family from her erratic personal decisions. The business press had a field day. Billionaire heiress throws away fortune for mechanics' love dominated headlines. Social media exploded with opinions ranging from romantic to ridiculous. Sophia weathered it all from an unexpected refuge, the small apartment Daniel shared with Lily. I can't stay here indefinitely, she told Daniel one evening, as they cleaned up dinner dishes. This is a 2-bedroom apartment and I'm sleeping on your couch. You're sleeping on our couch, Lily corrected from the kitchen table where she was working on homework. And it's a very good couch. Daddy picked it special. Daniel dried a plate, considering. There's a business opportunity I've been thinking about. Morrison's is expanding, looking for someone to handle the administrative side. Marketing, client relations, financial planning. The pay isn't billionaire level, but it's honest work. Sophia paused in her dishwashing. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to build something that belongs to you, not your family's legacy or Richard's merger dreams. Yours. The next morning, Sophia walked into Morrison Aviation, wearing jeans and a simple blouse, clothes she'd borrowed from Daniel's sister. She felt more herself than she had in designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. First day of school, teased Jake Morrison, the owner, who'd agreed to take a chance on the disgraced heiress. Something like that, Sophia replied, settling at the desk that would become hers. The work was challenging in ways she hadn't expected. Instead of managing billions in abstract investments, she was coordinating real schedules for real people. When a client's plane was delayed, it meant someone's family vacation was disrupted. When they completed a repair ahead of schedule, it meant a business owner could get home for his daughter's recital. "You're good at this," Daniel told her after her first month, reviewing the client satisfaction surveys that had never been higher. "I like seeing the impact," Sophia admitted. "At Reed Industries, I move numbers around on spreadsheets. Here, I'm helping people get where they need to go." But the most significant changes happened at home. Lily had appointed herself Sophia's life coach, with all the authority that 7-year-olds possess. "You need to eat more vegetables," she announced at dinner one night. "Daddy says vegetables make you strong. And you need to laugh more," she added. "Laughing makes your face prettier." "My face isn't pretty enough?" Sophia asked with mock concern. "It's pretty, but it's sad pretty, like a princess in a tower. But now you're out of the tower, so you can be happy pretty instead." Daniel watched these interactions with growing amazement. Somehow his daughter had managed to heal parts of Sophia that years of therapy and self-help books hadn't touched. The breakthrough came on a rainy Saturday when Lily dragged them both outside to the small courtyard behind their apartment building. "This used to be Mama's garden," she explained to Sophia, pointing to an overgrown patch of earth. "Daddy stopped taking care of it after she went to heaven, but I think Mama would want flowers here again." Sophia looked at the neglected plot, weeds and discarded leaves, but underneath, the soil was rich and dark with possibility. "What kind of flowers did your mama like?" she asked. "Sunflowers," Lily said immediately. "Big ones that followed the sun around. She said they were like happy thoughts that grew so big you couldn't ignore them." That afternoon, the three of them drove to a garden center. Sophia, who had never planted anything more complicated than a business strategy, found herself elbow-deep in potting soil, listening to Lily's serious instructions about seed depth and watering schedules. Daniel watched his daughter teach his girlfriend about his late wife's favorite flowers and felt something shift in his chest. Not the sharp pain of grief he'd carried for 3 years, but something warmer and more complex. Gratitude, maybe, or permission to be happy again. "Sarah would like this," he said quietly, helping Sophia pat soil around a young sunflower plant. "You think so?" "I know so. She always said gardens were about faith, planting something today because you believe tomorrow will be better." That evening, dirty and exhausted and happier than any of them could remember being, they sat on the fire escape outside Daniel's bedroom window, looking down at their newly planted garden. "It's going to be beautiful," Lily announced with absolute certainty. "How do you know?" Sophia asked. "Because we planted it together. Family gardens always grow the best." Sophia looked at Daniel over Lily's head, seeing her future reflected in his smile. Not the future she'd been raised to expect, mansion and servants and trust fund security, but something infinitely more valuable. A future she was choosing day by day, seed by planted seed. "Are we really a family now?" Lily asked, the question she'd been building up to all day. Daniel looked at Sophia, waiting for her answer. "If you'll have me," she said simply. "Forever and always," Lily declared, sealing the deal with the absolute authority of childhood. Below them, their garden settled into its first night, roots reaching deep into soil that had been waiting years to bloom again. 6 months later, Sophia woke up in the bedroom that had become hers. Not because Daniel had given it to her, but because Lily had insisted that families don't make mamas sleep on couches. The morning routine had become precious and ordinary in ways that her former life had never been. Coffee percolating, Lily's chatter about dreams and school plans, Daniel's quiet presence as he packed lunchboxes and checked homework folders. "Sophia," Lily said, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, "Mrs. Rodriguez wants to meet you at parent-teacher night. I'm not technically your parent, sweetheart, but you help with my homework, and you know all my friends' names, and you bought me those special crayons for art class. That's pretty much what mamas do." Daniel looked up from packing his toolbox, catching Sophia's eye with a look that held a question he hadn't yet asked out loud. The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door, official, businesslike, the kind that usually brought bad news. Daniel opened it to find a lawyer in an expensive suit, holding an envelope that looked ominous. "Miss Reed, I represent your father's estate attorneys. I've been instructed to deliver this personally." The letter was formal, legal, and devastating in its brevity. Sophia's father had given her an ultimatum: return to the family, marry Richard Blackstone, and resume her position in the company, or face permanent disinheritance and legal action to reclaim company assets she'd developed during her tenure. "He's claiming I used insider information to benefit Morrison Aviation," Sophia explained to Daniel after the lawyer left. "It's not true, but fighting it would cost more money than we have." "What are you going to do?" Daniel asked quietly. Sophia looked around their small kitchen, Lily's drawings on the refrigerator, coffee mugs that didn't match, a window that looked out on their sunflower garden where the first blooms were just beginning to show their faces. "I'm going to stay," she said simply. "But my father sees me as a business asset that's malfunctioned. Richard sees me as a merger opportunity. You and Lily see me as me. The choice is pretty simple." That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Daniel found Sophia sitting on the fire escape, looking out over the city lights. "Any regrets?" he asked, settling beside her. "About the money, the company, the penthouse?" She considered seriously. "I miss having the power to write big checks to charities, but I don't miss feeling empty at the end of every day." "And Richard?" Sophia laughed. "Richard's already engaged to someone else. Apparently, the Blackstone-Reed merger was more important than the actual people involved." They sat in a comfortable silence, watching their neighbors' windows light up with evening routines, families gathering for dinner, children being tucked into bed, couples settling in for the night. "Daniel?" "Lily asked me something today, and I didn't know how to answer." "What did she ask?" "She wanted to know if we were going to get married, and if she could be in the wedding, and if we could have a baby brother for her to teach things to." Daniel turned to look at her, his expression serious. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that grown-ups need to talk about important things before making big decisions." "And what do you think about those important things?" Sophia met his eyes, seeing in them the same steady certainty that had made her feel safe from their very first dinner. "I think," she said carefully, "that I've spent my whole life trying to live up to other people's expectations. I think I'm ready to start living up to my own." "And what do your expectations look like?" "Coffee in mismatched mugs, sunflowers in the garden, a little girl who needs help with fractions and thinks I'm magic because I can braid her hair, and a man who saw something worth choosing in me before he knew my bank balance." Daniel kissed her then, soft and sure, tasting like promises and sunflower seeds, and the kind of future that couldn't be bought or sold. Inside the apartment, Lily's latest drawing was stuck to the refrigerator with alphabet magnets, 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house with a garden full of flowers that reached toward a smiling sun. At the bottom, in her careful 7-year-old handwriting, she'd written, "My family that I picked myself." And in the morning, they would all wake up together in the home they had chosen, in the life they were building one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. If you believe that the best love stories aren't about finding someone perfect, but finding someone who chooses you every day, leave a comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We keep the human stories alive. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.